My name is Stan Tenen, and I'm the Director of Research for the Meru Foundation, and I'm assuming that most of you already know that. This is an update of some recent work. For the first time, I think we are able to show a provisional presentation of how the letters are related to hand gestures. And if you'll recall, that's very important for our thesis. The basis of one of the most important ideas that we have is that the text of Genesis and perhaps other canonized portions of canonized texts, of sacred texts, record letter-by-letter meditations. And if you recall, in the past, we were basing all of our letters on shadows of this shape, which we've identified as a flame initially. We also identified it, put that down, as the model of a fruit, with this being the seed, this being the fruit tree, and this being the volume of the fruit, such as an apple, and thus fitting the description in the introduction to the Zohar of a fruit tree, which is here, yielding fruit whose seed is in itself. And this is a model, as I've said on the Matrix of Meaning for Sacred Alphabets tape, of naked recursion, a minimum geometric representation of the propensity of the universe to propagate itself, to recur, to re-embed itself, to put a new seed capable of growing into a tree with new fruit inside of every fruit on the tree. Continuous self-embedment. And as we know mathematically, self-embedment is a model for hyperdimensionality, and it's part of our thesis that hyperdimensional mathematical concepts relate to the space in which consciousness takes place. But there's a major problem with our thesis as we presented it over the years, and that is it's been difficult to understand how you could turn this form around in your mind's eye so as to display the letters of the alphabet in the order given in a sacred text. If you can't turn the model around to display the letters in order, then you can't do the meditation. And to do that means you have to be able to visualize this form and rotate it somehow in your mind. Well, to make our long story short, and based on the material presented in A Matrix of Meaning for Sacred Alphabets, we've also identified the form as a model human hand. And here's a somewhat bigger one than we've had in the previous models. And as you can see, it's got a thumb, and there's a tip. And this represents the highest point of consciousness. This is where the star of seeds would be in a fruit. This is our mind. And out here we've got 4 fingers. You could almost say they are 4 rivers feeding the tree of life. Let me get it upside down here so you can see it. The tree in the middle of Eden. If you look at it this way, you could actually see how the model, put the other one down, could represent, if I rotate it, makes it a disk plane. Maybe you can see it better this way if I rotate it. You would define a disk around the base here. There'd be a star here and a crescent here. This is a reflector. This is a source. So you can identify this with the sun and this with the moon if you'd like. This with inside and this with outside. This is the seed. This again is the fruit. And the whole model is a model human hand. There would be 3 hands together, or 6 in some other configurations, that would make the whole fruit, and it depends on how it's arranged. I'll show you that hand very directly. This is important. If you look at a model fruit, here is an apple. Now, if this were a real fruit, if you went down the stem, you would come into the middle where there'd be a star of seeds in the middle, and the flower end would be here, and there'd be a hole. We could draw a deeper notch down the middle to go into the seeds in the middle. Now, the reason we realized this was a hand is once we had drawn these lines, which represent the edges of a particular kind of knot, which we'll get into later in the tape if we have time, or on a supplementary tape, what you realize is that this can be very much like a kind of bowling ball, where if you could put your thumb down into the middle, you could grasp between each of these edges. And it would look, if I can display it for the camera, just like a hand. Remember, my thumb is going into the middle, and what I'm saying is that each of these regions, from here to here, would be a hand. And of course, there'd be 3 hands as I go around. I'll show it to you from here. There's three hand-shaped sections. And so there'd be 4 fingers in each one, the thumb in the middle. There'd be 12 fingers around the perimeter. And thus you have 12 tribes around the seed center, the star, the tabernacle, if you'd like. In other traditions, there are 12 apostles, there are 12 knights around the round table, there are 12 imams of Shia Islam, there are 12 houses to the zodiac. There are a whole number of 12 around one forms. And in the middle, of course, if we were to open it, this disc, I don't know if you can see that very well, but the disc is the flat earth. This is where, I'll put it inside, maybe you can see the hand in there. You put the hand inside, this disc becomes the earth, there's the sun, this is the heavens, the dome. And what we've got in our model, again, is a model hand. Now, why a model hand? Well, now we're going to get back to the discussion. The hand, the human hand, is a form that is automatically possible to be visualized by human beings. Even a child, even a blind person, can see their own hand. If you close your eyes, you can try it right now with me on the camera. Just close your eyes and point towards something. Move your fingers any way you'd like. Move your hand any way you'd like. You can see where your hand is pointing. There, I'm saying how. Well, I know that my fingers are up and my thumb is pointing this way, well, etc. And when I open my eyes, I see it's correct. We each know our own hands. Now, since the letters are shadows of this model hand, as I tip my hand, I can immediately see the letters. And that's what we've found. Now, why should that be? Well, it makes sense because the hand is the means by which we project our conscious reality, our conscious wills, into the physical universe. We dispense our consciousness into physicality by means of the hand. The human hand is the human embodiment of a general projective principle. The Kabbalistic tradition teaches that the universe is created by the will of God, not the essence of God. We express our will in the physical world with our hands. Metaphorically, God expresses the creation of the universe, dispenses it into physicality as an unfurlment, as a projection of his will. And that's the model being presented. Now, I'll go into more of the details later, but I'd like to go through the letters. We've got to back up one more small step. And I'm not going to do this with the charts that I usually show. I'm going to try to do it all with my hands. If you remember the chart that we showed in the Matrix of Meaning for Sacred Alphabets, it was an Enneagram. 3 levels of Enneagram, 3 levels of 9. Well, if my thumbs go together in the middle, then I've got 9 points here. And we could go from Aleph to Beit to Gimel to Dalet to Hey to Vav to Zayin to Chet to Tet, using the Hebrew names. And we could continue that Yod, Chaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, final Nun, final Fei, final Tzadi. And we get a logical matrix, if you remember that tape, where the Aleph, the Yud, and the Kuf, at 3 levels, the level of Keter, of archetypes, the letter of Chachma, internal wisdom, and the later level of Bina, external understanding, each 3 levels, Aleph, Yud, and Kuf. Aleph, Yud, and Kuf represent the seed, the beginning point. The Beit, the Kof, and the Resh, they represent breaking open. They represent the first distinction. The Gimel, the Lamed, and the Shin, they represent action. The Gimel Dalet represents division, dispersion, dilution. I'll just go through the first rank to make it simple. You can look at the charts with the other tape. The Hey is connection. It's in the middle. It's a frame. The Vav is a pin. The Zayin is a projective marker, indicates projective action, growth. Zerah is a seed. The Chet is to surround, as a perimeter, as a fenced field. The Tet means totality, wholeness. The Tithe, the Teat, the gratuitous addition after the child is born to bring to full maturity. And again, with the 9 for each of the other 2 levels of the alphabet. And so we've assigned a logical meaning to each letter based on a logical matrix, which is based on the mathematics of the 27 lines that determine the surface of a hypersphere or of a torus. Again, that's on the other tape, and we'll get to it later.